I built the worst possible team that you can make in Pokemon Platinum, featuring 6 Pokemon so bad that they're typically considered to be worthless. Then, I tried to actually use this team to beat the entire game, with no overleveling, no evolving, or any items in battle. Just my 6 awful Pokemon, and the end goal of trying to become the champion. Even making it to Cynthia, let alone beating her with this team, is probably impossible. But I still wanted to try. Here's how it went. Our challenge begins, and instead of being given one of the 3 Sinnoh starters like usual, we're instead taken to this dumpster, where we find our 6 Pokemon for this challenge, featuring Azurill, Kricketot, Wurmple, Ralts, Magikarp, and Feebas. These Pokemon are the bottom of the barrel, truly the unwanted trash. In the regional Sinnoh Pokedex, these 6 have the lowest stats in the entire game. And to give you an idea of just how bad these Pokemon are, our strongest Pokemon, Feebas, has a combined base stat total of 200. By comparison, the Sinnoh starter Pokemon all have a stat total above 300, meaning that even the Pokemon that you're given for free right at the beginning of the game are still 50% stronger than anything on my team. I fear we might be in trouble. While our team is undeniably weak, since this is the very beginning of the game, you'd probably expect this part to be relatively straightforward. But spoiler, it is not. Because out of our 6 Pokemon, 5 of them start without knowing any damaging moves. Only Wurmple, with Tackle and Poison Sting, can actually hit our enemies. Regardless, this should still be fine, as long as we don't run into any flying types. Oh dear. It's only our first battle of the challenge, and I already have to resort to poison stalling against a level 5 Starly. Thankfully though, we are able to win due to our sheer numbers advantage, but this does not bode well for the future. Basically, for now, Wurmple has to put the entire team on its back. And thanks to some painfully slow poison stalling, we're able to clear through the first few trainers and make it to Jubilife City. Here, we're given the Quick Claw item, as well as a Poketch, which I'll be able to use to make feeble cries for help while my team are repeatedly being slaughtered. Obviously, for now, our first priority is getting some actual moves on our 5 helpless Pokemon. Since older Pokemon games don't give you an EXP share right off the rip, our only choice here is to start switch training against wild Pokemon. This is very tedious work, but it is necessary. Thanks to this, a few of our Pokemon do start to learn some actual moves. For example, Ralts is able to learn Confusion, followed by Double Team shortly after that. Azurill also then learns Bubble at level 10. So while half of my team is still pretty much useless, at least now we actually have some other attacking options. As a result, our next few battles aren't too much trouble, including our first fight against our rival, Barry. So before long, we're gradually able to make our way through the next route into Oreburgh City. This is the location of the first gym leader, Rourke, the rock-type specialist who serves as the first real hurdle of our challenge. Now, during our trip to Oreburgh City, we were given the HM for Rock Smash, a fighting type move that could be very useful here, if any of our Pokemon could actually learn it. This is going to be a recurring theme in this challenge, because not only do our Pokemon have low stats, but 3 of our Pokemon also can't learn any TMs whatsoever. Regardless, in the case of our first gym fight against Rourke, with such a limited move pool and multiple Pokemon that are weak against Rock, the real question here is, how much of this fight can Azurill actually solo with Bubble? To find out, we step into Rourke's gym as our first gym fight then gets underway. Using Bubble is our only real option here. It hits for decent damage on Geodude, but it's still pretty pathetic considering this is 4 times effective. Regardless, Azurill is still able to bubble its way through Geodude, and thankfully, the Onix that follows is also quad weak to water, meaning that Azurill can outlast that too. So Rourke was now left with only his ace Cranidos, and with the fight now down to a 6v1, this should be a pretty easy cleanup, right? Well, not exactly, because with Headbutt, it instantly finishes off our weakened Azurill, and without her, our remaining options for dealing with this Cranidos are so limited. Most of our Pokemon just die in a single hit, barely able to deal any damage against this fossil, and obviously, our two fish, who only know Splash, are no help here whatsoever, meaning that, very quickly, Cranidos completes a 1v6 reverse sweep, tearing through our entire team and handing us our first loss of the challenge. Losing like that did not fill me with confidence. It's only the first gym, and our Pokemon are already completely outclassed, getting one shot like they're nothing. Clearly, we can't just outmuscle Rourke with Azurill. We also can't go above level 14, since that's the highest level of Rourke's Pokemon. So, to win this fight, we were going to need a better plan, and probably some better luck. As our second attempt begins, the fight starts out just like last time, as Azurill bubbles through Geodude, as well as the Onix that comes in after that. Although once Cranidos hits the field, crucially, this is where things start to turn, because this time, Quick Claw activates. This lets Azurill move first, allowing us to hit Cranidos with Charm, harshly lowering its attack. Thanks to this nerf, we're then able to comfortably survive a hit and land another Charm by the time Azurill falls. But despite Cranidos being at -4 attack, this still isn't over. Our Wurmple isn't able to land a poison like I was hoping for, and then quickly falls to a critical hit. After that, two Confusions are able to get Cranidos low, but it's still not enough, as Ralts falls to a super effective Pursuit. So this leaves us with only 3 Pokemon, none of whom have any damaging moves. At least, sort of, because Kricketot is packing a secret weapon that might just be able to pull this off. The move, Bide. With this move, Kricketot spends the next 2 turns storing energy, before dealing double the damage taken in that time back to the opponent. And thanks to all of those attack nerfs, our Kricketot is just able to survive 2 attacks before unleashing the stored energy, finishing off Cranidos once and for all. It may have taken some luck, but with that, Rourke had been defeated, and our team of awful Pokemon had actually earned their first gym badge. For most trainers, this might not be a big achievement, but for our team, I was genuinely proud of them for making it through that. Beating Rourke is a big milestone for our team, because with our updated level cap, we can learn some really useful moves. For example, our 2 fish, who share 1 singular brain cell, both collectively learn Tackle at level 15. It's not much, but it's something, I guess. It's also around this time that Wurmple and Kricketot both learn how to use the move Bug Bite. It's a 60 base power move, making it a really solid option. And gee, I can't wait to see what other powerful moves our bug types learn. Yeah, these 2 Pokemon have now genuinely maxed out their moveset after only the first gym. Great. Our final upgrade for now is with Azurill, who learns Slam at level 15. This is a solid normal type move, which is made even better by the fact that Azurill has the huge power ability, which effectively doubles its physical attack. On top of these new moves, once we reach Floroma Town just to the north, we also get access to some useful berries, which we can farm an unlimited amount of. Basically, now with new moves and new berries, our team had just gotten a significant power boost, and this makes the next section of the game actually pretty manageable. For example, the first fight against Mars of Team Galactic is usually pretty tough, but by using Charm and Tail Whip, Azurill is able to nerf her Ace Perugly, after which a few slams are all we need to get the win. Having carried us through that fight, I then had to dedicate some lovely fan art to our beast of an Azurill. And yes, this is meant to be Azurill. Anyway, after gradually making our way through the Eterna Forest and arriving in Eterna City, we can take on our second gym fight against Gardenia and her grass types. Thankfully, this gym battle is a little easier than the last one, mostly because our 2 bug types have a really good matchup here. With Bug Bite, Kricketot is gradually able to wear down the lead Turtwig. Then, after Kricketot falls, the bug bites keep coming as Wurmple gets the trade onto Cherim, leaving Gardenia with only her ace, Roserade. This is such a strong Pokemon for this early on in the game. Regardless, with bug bites, Wurmple is able to steal Roserade's Citrus Berry and forces Gardenia to use her last potion. From here, the fight is still dangerously close, but we're gradually able to wear Roserade down before one last slam from Azurill is just enough to secure our second gym badge. So, with 2 gym badges now obtained and only 1 loss to my name, I was starting to feel pretty confident. For now, the 6 worst Pokemon in the game were actually holding their own, and surely this level of dominance was going to continue forever, right? Well, after taking care of Jupiter, just like we did Commander Mars, we're then clear to hop on our bike and head south of Eternus City. Following this path through Mount Coronet and out the other side eventually brings us to Hearthome City. And this is where the good times end, because our team was about to be clowned on. This is where we have to take on the 3rd gym leader, Fantina, who is, by far, our hardest fight yet. To put this into perspective, in that last gym fight, we had a really good type matchup and still almost lost. But this time, against Fantina and her ghost types, our team has a horrifyingly bad matchup. Let me break this down. Azurill has been our hard carry in most fights so far, but as a normal type, our slam can't hit Fantina's ghosts. Also, since Fantina's Pokemon are mostly special attackers, our charm is also largely ineffective here. On top of that, our other strong attacker, Ralts, is also bad here. It's already frail to begin with, but even more so in this fight, since Psychic is weak against Ghost. And just to add insult to injury, our 2 fish are even more useless here than usual, since their tackles are completely ineffective against Ghost. In short, this fight is a nightmare. But despite the overwhelming feeling of impending doom that had now set in, I knew that we had to at least try to win. So, after gradually making our way through the gym puzzle, we come face to face with Fantina. And after taking some very important notes, as the battle begins, I was ready to try and make a miracle happen. But that miracle did not occur. Even against an unevolved Duskull, our attacks barely do anything. And once Miss Magius hits the field, our team is completely helpless. With a string of magical leafs and shadow balls, our entire team is annihilated, barely even able to land any damage onto Fantina's ace. That was a very brutal loss, and this marks an important shift in our challenge. Our Pokemon were already starting to fall behind, and this power gap between us and our opponents was only going to grow wider. At this point, for the first time, I started to realize that this challenge just wasn't going to be possible. With that said, that was only our second loss, and I wasn't anywhere close to giving up just yet. Although clearly, we can't just outmuscle Fantina in a head-to-head showdown. So, if we wanted any chance of winning this fight, I was going to have to get in the lab and come up with something a little more creative. Thankfully, at our current level, Ralts has access to some interesting moves, Calm Mind and Double Team. Given our incredibly limited move pool right now, relying on these is likely my only option here. So now armed with a renewed strategy and some fresh prayers to RNGesus, we then began our rematch against Fantina. This lead Duskull is her only Pokemon that uses physical attacks. So my plan here is to first lead with Azurill and use Charm to nerf Duskull. Once it's at -6 attack, I then begin pivoting around between several of our Pokemon to try and burn through as much PP as possible. After which, having now lost 4 Pokemon, I then send in Ralts. My plan here is simply to spam Double Team, then boost up with Calm Mind, and just hope that I can dodge enough attacks to sweep through Fantina. Immediately, this strategy seems to work, as Ralts is able to quickly raise its evasion, dodging a bunch of Duskull's attacks. This buys us enough time to also max out our special attack and special defense with Calm Mind, meaning that at +6, our Ralts was now basically a demigod ready to crush Fantina. A confusion quickly wipes out Duskull, as Fantina then sends in Miss Magius. But while it does miss a Shadow Ball, even at +6, our confusion barely does more than half. And after eating its Citrus Berry, Miss Magius is still 2 hits away from death. Unfortunately, this is where my luck runs out, because on the next turn, Mismagius actually lands its Shadow Ball, bringing us to low HP. And at this range, Magical Leap, a move that can't miss, is all Fantina needs to finish off our Ralts. While I may have lost there, I now knew that this strategy could work, although we need so much to go our way, as my entire plan basically hinges on getting lucky. For example, if Ralts gets hit by Will-O-Wisp, we're basically guaranteed to lose. Additionally, if Fantina lands enough of her attacks through Double Team, Ralts can also just lose against Duskull. And of course, as we already saw, being hit by even one Shadow Ball from Mismagius is also likely to result in a loss. So, as you might expect, my losses quickly began to pile up as our beatdown at the hands of Fantina continued. However, on my 10th attempt, things finally go my way. While Ralts does get burned early on, our Rawst Berry heals this immediately, after which Duskull then struggles to land its attacks, buying us enough time to boost up our Ralts. Importantly, this time, after Duskull goes down, neither of Fantina's remaining ghosts are able to connect with Shadow Ball, allowing Ralts to successfully complete the sweep with Confusion, finally giving us the win over Fantina. With that, against all odds, our team had somehow managed to earn badge number 3. Our team had come a long way, but this victory did have an ominous undertone. It took 10 attempts and some really good RNG just to make it through the 3rd gym fight, and things were only going to get harder from here, as now our opponents would start to have larger teams and stronger Pokémon, all while my Pokémon remained the exact same with their pathetic, awful base stats. It felt like it was only a matter of time before our team reaches its limit. Regardless, with our 3rd gym badge now secured, we move on into the mid-game of Pokémon Platinum. This combination of Double Team and Calm Mind on Ralts is pretty inconsistent, but it's still our best option for the time being, especially because at level 28, Ralts learns a new move, Psychic, giving us a really nice power boost. As a result, this holy trinity of moves would become somewhat of a crutch, at least for the next little while. For example, in the upcoming rival fight against Barry, I do suffer 2 quick losses after failing to dodge enough attacks. But by the 3rd attempt, Ralts is able to maneuver through this fight just like we did against Fantina. So while this strategy clearly isn't consistent, it is giving us progress, as now we can finally move beyond Hearthome City. While Ralts is my main carry, we do have one other option, because by teaching Azurill the move Return, we get access to an insanely strong move. With max friendship, huge power, and its normal typing, Azurill can do some serious damage with Return. So with the combined powers of my buffed dynamic duo, we're able to make our way through Solaceon Town, passing the side arc of Route 210, and into Route 215. This journey is mostly smooth, with the exception of this guy, Ace Trainer Dennis. This is the last mandatory battle before we can enter Veilstone City, and seemingly, this random trainer just hard counters my whole team. Seriously, despite this just being a random trainer, I would go on to lose this fight 9 times, proving that, with my team, any fight has the potential to be difficult and rage-inducing. Honestly, this fight had me ready to punch a hole through my screen, but after 20 straight minutes of seething and suffering, I was eventually able to brute force my way through this. I hate you, Ace Trainer Dennis. So, with the evil Dennis now conquered, we're clear to enter Veilstone City, a very important destination for our challenge for 2 big reasons. The first of these is the next gym. Gym number 4 is led by Maylene and her fighting types, and despite her having some really strong Pokemon, this is a much better matchup for us than Fantina was. So while I did lose this fight 4 times, it doesn't take too long for us to find success. By making use of our bug types, we're able to nerf the lead Metatype, as Wurmple can use String Shot to lower Metatype's speed, and Kricketot can use Growl to lower its attack. After Azurill uses Charm to nerf Metatype even further, we're then back to our strategy of using Ralts with Double Team and Calm Mind. With a little luck, once our stats are maxed out, by using Psychic, we're able to quickly rip through Maylene's fighting types with super effective damage, delivering us a relatively simple 4th badge. However, in addition to giving us another gym badge, Veilstone City is also significant for another reason, and that is TMs. See, Veilstone City is home to the department store and the game corner. These give us access to a ton of useful TMs. For example, we can buy Blizzard from the department store, a move that Feebas can actually learn, meaning we can finally start to make use of its very impressive, very deadly special attack stat. Alright Feebas, show us your most powerful Blizzard. Blech. We'll work on it. Seriously though, this place has a lot of good moves, like Protect, Natural Gift, Hidden Power, Thunderbolt, Psychic, the list goes on and on. Importantly, these moves can also be bought an unlimited number of times. So while most TMs in this game can only be learned once, these moves can easily be forgotten and then relearned when we need them. As a result, after buying a metric ton of TMs from Veilstone City, we're now clear to move on. And this is another important checkpoint in our challenge. If you look at the Sinnoh map, now we're able to access this entire area, all the way from Veilstone City through Pastoria and looping back up to Hearthome City. This is a pretty large portion of the map that also happens to contain some very useful items. The first of these are citrus berries, giving us some slightly better recovery. And on the topic of berries, just outside Pastoria City, we find this lady. She gives us all of the berries that reduce the power of super effective moves, and these are going to be incredibly useful. It's also at this point that we get two very good TMs. The first of these is Trick Room, which I'll be saving for later on. The other one, however, is Toxic, and I'll be using this one right now. Because thanks to the TMs that we picked up in Veilstone City, we now have the tools to turn Feebas into a monster. See, while Feebas's offensive stats are absolutely atrocious, its defensive stats, at least on the special side, are a little more respectable. And unlike Magikarp, who can't learn any TMs, Feebas actually has a pretty solid list of compatible TMs. So my plan is to take this unassuming fish and turn it into a stalling behemoth. With that, Feebas is now boasting one of the dirtiest movesets ever created. Using Toxic, Double Team, and Protect may be an evil, dishonorable strategy, but I mean, look at my team. At this point, I'll take any win I can possibly get. So, out of nowhere, Feebas had now become a big player on our team. And as we headed into the Pastoria City gym, Feebas would immediately demonstrate its value. Gym leader number 5, Crash Awake, has 3 very strong water types. My first instinct here was to have Azurill use Charm to try and lower Gyarados' attack. However, even after Gyarados is nerfed, it's still so strong, and Wake is still able to wipe through the majority of our team with Waterfall, including Ralts, who isn't able to boost up its stats fast enough, ultimately resulting in a very quick loss on our first attempt. Wake's team is deadly, and if I had to rely solely on Ralts sweeping, this could be a very long, very painful fight. However, this time, I decided to unleash our new secret weapon, Feebas. And this fish would end up making all the difference as attempt 2 then got underway. This time, I lead with Kricketot, who barely survives a waterfall from Gyarados. This allows us to land a growl before Kricketot then goes down. Thanks to that growl, Azurill is now able to survive 2 hits, landing 2 charms onto Gyarados, meaning that Crash Awake's lead was now significantly nerfed. And now we're clear to send in the boss, Feebas. I start by spamming Double Team to quickly raise our evasion, and thankfully, we're able to dodge a lot of Wake's attacks, after which we then hit Gyarados with Toxic. With this status condition, Gyarados will take an increasing amount of damage every single turn. By combining this with our maxed out evasion and Protect, Feebas becomes a stalling monster, as Wake struggles to land a hit, forcing him to helplessly watch on as his all-powerful Gyarados slowly succumbs to poison. I was intending to use this same strategy against the Float Cell that comes in next, but while I am able to use Toxic, unfortunately, Wake manages to connect with Crunch, wiping out Feebas in a single shot. Regardless, with Float Cell now badly poisoned, Wurmple is able to help stall out the next few turns, causing Float Cell to also fall. This leaves Wake with only his final Quagsire, but from here, 2 quad-effective Magical Leafs are all we need to clean up the fight, giving us a comprehensive win over Crash Awake. With that, we're given our 5th gym badge, and somehow our team is still holding strong. At this point, point, I was genuinely surprised by how well our team had been coping over these last few gyms, and I started to wonder just how far could we really go with these Pokemon. Although it wouldn't be long before the cracks in our team would start to appear. For now though, we're able to move on as Cynthia gives us the medicine we need to move past the Psyduck blocking Route 210. Thanks to this, now we can move further north, eventually arriving at Celestic Town. And it's here, inside the ruins, that we have our first battle with Cyrus of Team Galactic. His team right now only has 3 Pokemon, and none of them are fully evolved. So this fight should be relatively straightforward. Remember how I said that any fight has the potential to be dangerous in this challenge? Yeah. This is one of them. Strangely enough, this odd mix of Pokemon is actually a big counter to our team. Dark types like Murkrow and Sneasel make it really hard for Ralts to have much of an impact, especially since Murkrow knows Feint Attack, which will always connect, meaning that spamming Double Team with Ralts isn't a viable strategy. To top it all off, since Golbat is a poison type, Feebas can't just sweep with Toxic. Honestly, this first fight against Cyrus wasn't even on my radar as something to look out for. However, as my first few attempts all resulted in miserable defeats, I quickly began to realize that Cyrus is a threat. So much of a threat, in fact, that he quickly took the record for giving me my most losses against any trainer. The lead Sneasel is so tough to take down, since it deals so much damage with Slash. Although, even if I can take it out, the Golbat that follows is even deadlier. Our bug types don't stand much of a chance against a flying type, and since it knows Bite, our Ralts also has a hard time dealing with it. Ultimately, after suffering a combined 28 total losses against Cyrus, it took some insane luck to finally beat this. To win, I basically need Sneasel to miss every attack into Feebas. This allows us to hit it with Toxic, and thanks to an assist from Magikarp, we're then slowly able to stall out the poison damage while using Double Team on Feebas whenever we can. Then, against Golbat, I still need Cyrus to keep missing his attacks, all while having Feebas not miss with Blizzard. This obviously requires a lot of luck, but on this particular attempt, we're able to land 5 consecutive Blizzards, all while dodging Golbat's attacks. This leaves Cyrus with only his Murkrow, who is still a massive threat. I have to rely on using Cobra Berries to help my bugs each survive a super effective Drill Peck. This allows Kricketot to hit Growl, and lets Wurmple use Bug Bite to snatch Murkrow's Citrus Berry. In the end, Murkrow is almost able to wipe through my entire team single-handedly. But thanks to Ralts holding a Colbur Berry, we can survive one super effective Feint Attack before Thunderbolt is finally able to finish the fight. I was so relieved to be done with Cyrus, but that felt like such a hollow victory. Firstly, because that battle had me tearing my hair out after losing so many close attempts. But even more significant is that fight completely killed all of my confidence. I mean, we needed to get so lucky just to beat a team of 3 unevolved Pokemon. So how was I going to stand any chance against Cyrus's fully evolved team? Or one of the Elite Four? Or, God forbid, Cynthia? It felt like it was now only a matter of time before our team would reach their ceiling. So, as we then began the journey towards Canalave City, I knew that eventually we would come up against an opponent that is simply just too strong. Although, I didn't quite expect that moment to come as quickly as it did. Because shortly after arriving in Canalave City, on the bridge, we're met by the devil. Barry. We've already fought Barry several times during this challenge, but don't let that fool you. His current team is on a whole other level. At a glance, this already looks bad. He's got 5 Pokemon, all of them fully evolved and all of them strong. This would already be bad enough on its own. But when you look at what moves these Pokemon have, it gets so much worse. To start with, 4 of Barry's Pokemon have moves that can't miss. So our double team strategy that has carried us through most of this game, yeah, that won't work at all. In addition, 3 of Barry's Barry's Pokemon have priority moves, meaning that Trick Room won't be able to save us. And to really put the icing on this nightmare of a cake, 2 of Barry's Pokemon also happen to know Dark-type moves. You know, those things that made me struggle so hard against Cyrus. Overall, this combination of counters plus the raw power on Barry's team meant that I knew this fight was going to be ridiculous. And yet, much to my surprise, it was even worse than I expected. Seriously, this fight is brutal. On my first attempt, I couldn't even make it past Barry's first Pokemon. Staraptor just outsped and swept through my entire team with Aerial Ace and Takedown, instantly handing me my worst loss of the entire challenge. That beatdown wasn't just due to bad luck either. I went on to try this fight several times, and on my best attempts, I was able to make it through Staraptor with Toxic. However, while trying to stall out the poison, we just lose so many Pokemon in the process, meaning that once Barry sends out his second Pokemon, it doesn't take long for him to clean up the rest of our team. I attempted this fight 5 times, and that's all it took for me to reach a very humbling conclusion. We cannot win this. Barry's Pokemon are simply too strong, and his attacks counter all of our strategies. This team is so deadly, and far more dangerous than anything we've had to face so far. At this point, I knew that, realistically, we only had one more option: full power. See, as it stands, all of our Pokemon have random natures and random IVs. But what if our Pokemon were actually optimized, brought to their full potential with egg moves and optimized stats? How much of a difference would this actually make? Well, we were about to find out, because our Pokemon would then go through a rigorous, intensive training program that would make them completely optimized. Don't get me wrong, these are still the worst 6 Pokemon in the game. That won't change. But at least now, they're the best possible version of the worst team in the game. With this, our Pokemon get a decent power buff, in some cases even doubling certain stats. Our support Pokemon also get some extra bulk, which our team desperately needs. However, are these changes actually enough to make a difference? Our previous attempts against Barry weren't even close, but now, with our team on the absolute limit, I was ready to once again try and conquer this demon. I lead with Feebas, and my plan is still to try and use Poison to deal with Staraptor. For some reason, Barry is now focused on raising his evasion with Double Team, although this is great for us, as it buys us time for the toxic damage to build up and for Feebas to use Double Team. Barry is still able to get Feebas low, but thanks to our improved bulk and protect, Feebas is able to stall out the poison. So this fight is already going better than any of our previous attempts. Barry then sends in Roserade, and thanks to our increased evasion, we're able to dodge a few attacks and hit Roserade with Blizzard. This gets it low before Feebas ultimately falls once Giga Drain connects. Regardless, this is where Azurill takes over. While Barry is able to set up toxic spikes, Return is all we need for Azurill to get the revenge kill. On top of that, thanks to Azurill's improved bulk, it's also somehow able to live a Brick Break from Heracross, after which a Silk Scarf boosted Return is able to wipe out Heracross in one shot. While we were now in the lead, this is where the very deadly Infernape emerges, and immediately a Mach Punch finishes off our weakened Azurill. This Infernape could easily sweep through the rest of our team, so my plan is to send in the Bug Battalion. Unfortunately, Kricketot isn't able to survive long enough to use Bide. However, thanks to a held Citrus Berry, Wurmple is able to survive 2 attacks, allowing us to significantly nerf Infernape's speed with String Shot. While Wurmple does fall soon after, this clears the path for our Ralts, as now we outspeed Infernape and a super effective Psychic is quickly able to take down Barry's starter. This leaves our rival with only his Floatzel. However, a Psychic just isn't enough to get the KO. After which, Floatzel then hits us with a second pursuit, finishing off our Ralts, which means the fight was now down to a 1v1, as Barry's Floatzel would be taking on my ace, Magikarp. Obviously, Magikarp is not a hard hitter, but with Floatzel at such low health, I was getting desperate. We can comfortably survive a Swift from Floatzel before Magikarp charges up a big flail and You've got to be kidding me. Regardless, this isn't a problem since Magikarp can survive another Swift before dishing out one last flail and… oh my god! How are you so weak, Magikarp? Despite that pathetic display, thanks to our held Citrus Berry, Magikarp is somehow able to survive a third attack. And with Floatzel now holding on for dear life, this time, Flail is enough to finish the job. With that, our fish had clutched up, and we had actually managed to beat Barry and his insanely strong team of 5. At this point, I once again started to believe that this challenge might actually be possible. With Barry defeated, this allows us to take on gym number 6. On paper, Byron and his steel types are a horrible matchup for us. Feebas's Toxic and Azuriel's Return are both useless here. With that said, I do have a plan, revolving around 2 very useful moves that I picked up in Veilstone City. And the first of these is Hidden Power, a special move that changes type based on a Pokemon's IVs. And in the case of our newly improved Ralts, its stats are specifically tailored so that Hidden Power becomes a fire move. The second new move is Natural Gift. This one is a physical move where the typing of the attack is determined by the berry being held by the user. And since we have a bunch of berries, this move gives us a lot of flexibility. So armed with these 2 new moves, I now had a plan to try and take on the Steel type gym. The battle begins, and by leading with Azuriel and giving it a Shuka Berry, our Natural Gift becomes a ground type move, annihilating Magneton with quad effective damage. Steelix comes in next, and Azuriel, along with our bug types, all chip in to gradually nerf Steelix's attack. After which, Ralts comes in and boosts up twice with Calm Mind. Thanks to that, a Hidden Power Fire instantly melts down Steelix. This leaves Byron with only his Bastiodon. However, this Pokemon only knows 1 damaging move, and Stone Edge only has 5 PP. So, with the help of our 2 fish, we gradually begin PP stalling. Ultimately, this leads to Magikarp splashing its way to victory, as Bastiodon eventually dies to its own struggle recoil. With that, we'd earned badge number 6. And for the second consecutive fight, Magikarp was the one who clutched up and got us the win. Everybody like this video right now to say thank you to our new king and MVP, Magikarp. At this point in the Pokemon Platinum storyline, we have to pursue Team Galactic across the 3 Sinnoh Lakes. However, thanks to our new moves and recent upgrades, this next section of the game actually becomes relatively straightforward. Don't get me wrong, these fights are not easy, and I did lose a few times due to poor planning and bad RNG. But overall, none of these fights are as deadly as that last encounter with Barry. As a result, I was able to make quick progress, clearing through Commander Saturn and Commander Mars, before then making my way north towards Snow Point City. The 7th gym is here, and this one is equally as smooth. The combination of Azuriel's Return, along with Feebas's Toxic, is all we need to handle most of Candace's Ice types, yielding us a comfortable 7th badge. This then kicks off the final arc of the Team Galactic storyline, in which we first return to Veilstone City and storm the Team Galactic building. After defeating Commander Saturn, again, we free the Lake Trio, and then begin the long climb through Mount Coronet up towards Spear Pillar. Once we reach the summit, we have to team up with Barry to take on Mars and Jupiter in a double battle. Although, I guess they don't see me as much of a threat since my Pokemon mostly get ignored here. As a result, we're basically free to keep firing off attacks, leading us to what ended up being a pretty simple victory. So, that last section of the game had been very smooth, and our team had once again built up some momentum. However, this is the point where our momentum stops, as our team would now have to face its next big hurdle. Because once Cyrus summons the Pokemon equivalent of the Devil, we then pursue him into the Distortion world, and after traversing our way through this reality-bending realm, we eventually find Cyrus, waiting for one final showdown. Keep in mind, Cyrus is the one trainer that has given us more losses than anyone else. When we last fought, he only had 3 Pokemon and none of them were fully evolved, yet he still decimated us. But now, his team is on a whole other level, now featuring 5 Pokemon, all of them fully evolved, with an added 3rd Dark type and an all-new Gyarados. If we were struggling so hard against Cyrus's earlier team, how would we stand any chance against this insane roster? Well, to find out, I stepped up to Cyrus, ready to try and continue my dominance. And the fight starts out reasonably well, as Azurill can overpower the lead Houndoom, taking it down with return, after which Cyrus then sends in Honchkrow. But this is where things take a turn, because Dark Flying is a really difficult type combo for us to deal with. After Honchkrow quickly finishes off our weakened Azurill, I try sending in our Bugs, but thanks to Honchkrow knowing Heat Wave, it easily burns through both of them. And despite our Ralts holding a Colbur Berry, it also doesn't last long. This leaves us with only our two fish, who helplessly splash around until their untimely deaths, meaning that once again, we had been decimated by Cyrus, as our entire team had just been swept by a single Pokemon. Once again, we had been thrashed into the dirt, as Cyrus's team hits harder than anything we've faced so far. With that said, Cyrus's team doesn't have any fully accurate moves, so I decided that my best plan of attack would be to rely on our strongest soldier, Double Teaming. This move has been a crutch for most of this challenge, and I was hopeful that it would still work. My general plan is to use Feebas's Toxic to stall against the lead Houndoom. This is the only special attacker on Cyrus's team, so it's not an ideal candidate to set up on. Thankfully, by using Protect and Rest, Feebas is able to force Cyrus to burn his full restore. And while we do end up having to sacrifice our Wurmple and Magikarp in the process, Houndoom ultimately does fall to poison. Cyrus then sends in Gyarados, who, despite being incredibly strong, is a better setup target. Since it only knows physical attacks, we can have Kricketot use Growl, as well as Azurill using Charm, significantly nerfing Gyarados' attack. This clears the way for Ralts, who can now begin boosting its stats and immediately die to a critical hit. Even if we are able to boost up our stats with Double Team and Calm Mind, we still need to get so lucky. It's one thing to have to dodge 1 or 2 attacks, but needing to dodge almost all of Gyarados' moves and every attack of Cyrus's other 3 Pokemon just requires so much to go our way. And as you would expect, our losses then continued piling up. This type of strategy becomes so tough to pull off when we're fighting a large team. And since every fight from this point on would be just like this, I desperately needed a more consistent strategy. And so, it was time to pull the trigger and use a TM that I'd been saving for a long time: Trick Room. This move is perfect for us, since for 5 turns, it makes the slower Pokemon move first. And in case you haven't noticed, our team is really slow. While Trick Room is in effect, we don't need to dodge attacks, since we'll be the ones moving first. This should make our fights more consistent, although now Trick Room will have to forever occupy one of Ralts' move slots, since it can't be relearned. Regardless, this felt like my best option for taking on Cyrus. So, armed with a new strategy, we once again stepped up to Cyrus, looking for revenge. The beginning of this fight is still the same as before, with Feebas and Magikarp working together to poison stall the lead Houndoom. After that, once again, Kricketot and Azurill both nerf Gyarados' attack with Growl and Charm. In addition, Wurmple can also spam String Shot to completely slow it down. Ultimately, this leaves the fight all up to Ralts. However, thanks to those attack nerfs, we can at least tank some hits, allowing us to use a few double teams, which then buys us even more time to begin using Calm Mind. By the time Ralts is at +6 special attack, we're now at low health. But thankfully, Ralts is able to dodge the next attack, allowing us to set up Trick Room. With this, Ralts is now in the driver's seat, as Thunderbolt decimates the opposing Gyarados, after which another super effective Thunderbolt then wipes out Honchkrow, with the Weavile that comes in after that also suffering the exact same fate. This leaves Cyrus with only his Crobat, but with 1 turn still remaining on Trick Room, we're clear to fire off one last Thunderbolt, wiping out Crobat instantly, giving us an insane win over Cyrus. That is huge. Despite being utterly decimated by Cyrus earlier in the challenge, we'd now conquered his final maxed out team. With Cyrus defeated once and for all, he walks off, leaving us to deal with Giratina. So we then step forward to fight the devil, armed with the holy power of my derpy second fish. Giratina is a strong Pokemon, but once Feebas hits it with Toxic, our win is basically guaranteed. After stalling for a few turns and sacrificing a few Pokemon, Giratina ultimately falls to poison. With that, the 6 worst Pokemon in Sinnoh had essentially just saved the world. This isn't exactly the team of heroes that you'd expect, but somehow we managed to pull it off. At this point, like me, you might be thinking, well, if we can beat strong teams like Barry and Cyrus, the rest of this challenge should be pretty straightforward, right? Ha! Not even close. The hardest fights of this game, by far, still remained, and our team hadn't even scratched the surface of the kind of pain and suffering that was waiting for us in the final leg of this challenge. With that said, the immediate future is a little less deadly. After a short trip through Route 222, we arrive in Sunnyshore's City, location of the final gym, led by Volkner and his electric types. By no means is this fight easy, but it's also not as bad as Cyrus. Admittedly, I did get pretty lucky here, dodging Jolteon's Charge Beam on turn 1. This allows us to set up Trick Room for free. From here, we don't have too much trouble working our way through Volkner's team. Having a Wakan Berry on Feebas helps us to land Toxic onto Electivire, which we're eventually able to stall out. Then, against the final Luxray, Return brings it to low health with poison damage, then ultimately finishing the fight. With that, we'd earned our 8th badge. Somehow, this assortment of Pokemon actually managed to beat all 8 gym leaders. And considering how screwed we've been at multiple points in this challenge, I'm genuinely proud of our team for having made it this far. Although, now our attention turns, as there's only one hurdle left for the worst possible team to try and overcome. The Pokémon League, where the toughest fights of this entire challenge are still ahead. Even making it to the Pokémon League isn't easy. Once we enter Victory Road, this place is packed with strong trainers. So much so that I even lost a few battles while making my way through this. But after eventually traversing through, we exit Victory Road and finally arrive at the Pokémon League. Although, before we can actually enter the Elite Four, first we have to conquer Barry in one final showdown. His team is now objectively stronger, with the addition of Snorlax, making this a 6v6. With that said, while this fight is tough, and I did lose several times here, this is nothing compared to the Elite Four. By leading with Kricketot holding a Cobra Berry, we're just able to survive 2 Aerial Aces, which means we can use Bide, allowing us to instantly KO Staraptor. Yeah, a Route 1 bug just defied the whole food chain and took out a fully evolved bird. Despite Infernape finishing off our weakened bug and one-shotting our Feebas with Focus Blast, Ralts is then just able to survive a super effective Shadow Claw. This allows us to set up Trick Room, and thanks to Ralts holding the Mind Plate, our Psychic is just enough to knock out Infernape in one hit. Sadly, it's not enough to take down Heracross, who then gets the revenge kill on our Psychic type. However, our Azurill can still make use of Trick Room, quickly finishing off Heracross and one-shotting Barry's Floatzel with Return. Although, with Trick Room now expired, handling Barry's last 2 Pokemon becomes much more treacherous. To regain speed control, I sacrifice Magikarp for the greater good, allowing me to summon Wurmple in defense mode. Importantly, Wurmple is able to hit Snorlax with a few string shots before falling, which means when our final Pokemon, Azurill, returns to the field, we're now faster, and this is where my luck would start to kick in, because Return lands a critical hit, causing Snorlax to fall in one shot. Barry still has his Roserade, but my luck hadn't run out, because while we do get put to sleep with Grass Whistle, Azurill then wakes up on the very next turn. This allows us to fire off one last Return, wiping out Roserade in a single shot. With that, we had conquered Barry's final team. Honestly, this felt really satisfying. The worst team in the game was just able to beat 6 strong Pokemon by relying on some cool strategies and a little bit of luck. I was so proud of our team for having even made it this far. Earlier in the challenge, I never would have expected that we could actually make it all the way to the Pokemon League. With that said, making it here is one thing, but beating the Pokemon League is a whole different story. The Elite Four are incredibly strong, and we have to fight all of them back to back. At this point in the game, the difference in power between our Pokemon and our opponent's Pokemon is absurd. Our strongest, super effective moves aren't even one-shotting anymore. So this would be the final test for our team, to determine whether these 6 worst Pokemon in Sinnoh could actually become champions. With that, it was time to begin the Pokemon League. The first fight is against Aaron, the Bug-type specialist featuring 5 really solid Pokemon. However, Bug types are typically pretty weak, and with Hidden Power Fire, I was half expecting Ralts to quickly clean up this fight. What a fool I was. Turns out, I completely underestimated Aaron. In reality, this is by far our hardest fight of the entire challenge so far, and it all starts with his lead, Yanmega. It's a bug flying type, which gives it good coverage against half of our team. On top of that, Yanmega also likes to spam double team, making it really frustrating to deal with. Finally, Yanmega also knows U-turn, so even if we do nerf it, Aaron can easily pivot, removing any stat drops. As my first attempt began, I would immediately learn just how dangerous this thing is. I tried leading with Feebas and Toxic Stalling. At first, this seems to work reasonably well, but Aaron is still able to take out Magikarp. And after using a full restore, Feebas follows soon after. So plan A had failed miserably. As a backup, I then send in Ralts with the intention of using Hidden Power Fire. However, even with Ralts holding a Tangerberry, Bug Buzz still wipes out Ralts in one shot. And if that's not enough, Azurill would then also die instantly thanks to a critical hit. This leaves us with only our 2 bugs, both of which stand no chance against Air Slash. With that, our entire team had just been decimated, not even making it past Aaron's first Pokemon. Clearly, using either Ralts or our bug types against Yanmega just wasn't going to be an option. Although I did have a little more success on attempt 2. By giving Azurill a Charty Berry, Natural Gift becomes a rock type move which decimates Yanmega in one hit. Although this brings out Heracross, another really problematic Pokemon. All of its moves are really strong, and Heracross has coverage against most of our team. With Megahorn and Close Combat, Heracross instantly wipes through half of our Pokemon. And while Kricketot is able to take down Heracross with Bide, thanks to a lucky Stone Edge miss, the damage has already been done. From here, Vespiquen can easily clean up the rest of our Pokemon, handing us another brutal loss. Obviously, this was looking grim. Aaron's team is just so powerful. I was determined to keep trying, but would then spend the next several hours being tortured. I was testing out a ton of different strategies just to try and find something that sticks. But nothing was working. I persisted with Feebas, trying to win the RNG war against Yanmega with Double Team. But if Yanmega hits us with a crit, the attempt is over. And if Aaron uses U-turn to bring in Heracross, it will then likely wipe through our entire team. This all requires so much to go our way, and it still gets worse. Because even if we're lucky enough to set up Trick Room, a Hidden Power Fire still isn't enough to take down Heracross. While Azurill can get the revenge kill and do some decent damage into Aaron's team, it's still not enough to even come close to winning. No matter what I tried, we were being decimated. Eventually, it started to become clear that my best chance of winning would be to rely on Ralts boosting up its stats and sweeping. But that is a lot easier said than done. Doing this requires so much luck. I thought that Heracross would be a good target to try and set up on, since by giving Kricketot a Charty Berry, we can take a Stone Edge and hit Heracross with Growl to lower its attack. And since Megahorn is a pretty inaccurate move, I expected Ralts to eventually get lucky and be able to sweep. But that isn't what happened. Most attempts were absolutely hopeless, although attempt 20 was my luckiest one yet. This time, Kricketot dodges a Stone Edge and is able to hit Heracross with multiple Growls, after which Wurmple can also use String Shot to slow Heracross down. With a quick assist from Azurill, we then charm Heracross, lowering it to -6 attack. Once Azurill falls, now it's time to send in Ralts. Immediately, we get hit by Megahorn, which we can only survive thanks to Heracross's nerfed attack and our Tangerberry. We won't survive a second one though, and just have to hope that Ralts can dodge attacks with Double Team. And on this attempt, that's exactly what happened. Ralts is able to max out its evasion, and then begin boosting up its stats with Calm Mind. Despite getting hit by one Night Slash, Ralts is able to max out its special attack and set up Trick Room. meaning that now Ralts was in the driver's seat, ready to sweep. With a +6 hidden power fire, Heracross is decimated in one shot, after which Yanmega then follows suit, and Scizor obviously does too, being 4 times weak to fire. While Vespiquen is Aaron's bulkiest bug, it also can't tank a hit, meaning that now Aaron was left with only his final Pokemon, Drapion. However, this is where things go off the rails, because Trick Room is now expired, meaning that Drapion outspeeds us. And while Ralts does have maxed out evasion, of course, Drapion knows Aerial Ace, which is guaranteed to hit, finishing off our Ralts right at the last minute. Even Magikarp isn't able to save us, and I can only watch on as our best attempt by far is stomped into the dirt for yet another crushing loss. Our challenge had now reached a total of 100 losses, and that number would continue to rise quickly. That last attempt was so close, although now I had a slightly better strategy in mind to deal with Drapion. Although over the next few hours, I would continue trying this fight, but just couldn't replicate that same kind of luck. And as a result, we continued losing again and again. I just couldn't dodge enough attacks, or I'd get critical hit at the worst possible time. I was now in RNG hell, as this fight had become a nightmare. I was losing my mind. But after 75 straight losses against Aaron, I just had to admit that this plan wasn't going to work. That blessed attempt from earlier was just too rare to try and replicate. So I had to go back to the drawing board to try and come up with a new plan. Out of all of those losses, there was one that stood out. On this particular attempt, Feebas was able to use Toxic on Vespiquen. This is significant because Vespiquen knows the move Heal Order, and once Toxic damage builds up, Vespiquen will basically be forced into using Heal Order to prevent itself from dying to poison. So I wanted to try and use this loop to my advantage. With that in mind, a short time later, I'd built a new plan based around Vespiquen. Don't get me wrong though, this strategy still requires a lot of RNG. We basically need to make it through Aaron's first 2 Pokemon without losing Feebas. This was proving incredibly difficult, and my losses continued piling up. However, after suffering our 92nd straight loss, we were about to have our closest attempt yet. To quickly take out Yanmega, I have to hope that Azurill will barely survive Bug Buzz before firing back with a Rock-type natural gift, giving us the first KO. Despite Azurill now being on the brink of death, it can still be useful. So, against Heracross, I switch out, basically sacrificing Magikarp. After which, I then send in Kricketot, and this is where we need to get lucky. I basically need Heracross to miss one of its stone edges, which on this attempt is exactly what happens. And thanks to using Bide, we then unleash energy, wiping out the very deadly Heracross. Aaron then sends in Vespiquen, and this is where our new plan takes hold. Kricketot is still able to land a growl before falling, after which Wurmple can then spam String Shot, making Vespiquen incredibly slow. Thanks to this, Azurill now outspeeds, meaning that we can use Charm before our weakened Azurill is finished off. And this is where Feebas enters the fray. Our fish has a very important role to play. First, we need to land Toxic onto Vespiquen, which is easy enough. Then, we need to stall for a few turns, while Toxic damage slowly builds up. Once Vespiquen falls to around half health, this is where we send in Ralts. Previously, we would have to try and boost up Ralts in the face of Heracross, and just hope that we could dodge its attacks. But now, Vespiquen is caught in a toxic cycle, using Heal Order to desperately try and stay alive, during which Ralts is free to begin boosting up its evasion, completely uncontested. This allows us to max out our evasion by the time Aaron uses his full restore. We can then begin using Calm Mind to boost up our offense. Thankfully, we're able to reach +6 without taking any damage, after which Ralts sets up Trick Room, and from here, 2 Thunderbolts are all we need to finish Vespiquen. Scizor then dies in a single hit, once again leaving Aaron with only his ace, Drapion. But this time, we still have one turn left of Trick Room. And with one more Thunderbolt, Ralts is able to claim the final KO. With that, after 92 losses, we had finally beaten Aaron. That took more losses than everything before it combined. While it was soul-destroying, I was so relieved to finally be done with those bugs. Somehow, the worst 6 Pokemon in the game had actually just beaten a member of the Elite Four, which is pretty wild. So the Aaron arc was over, and now we can move on to the rest of the Elite Four. Next up is Bertha and her ground types. All of these Pokemon are strong, but thankfully, this fight is nowhere near as deadly as that last one. See, throughout this challenge, I've been saving my TMs, since you only get one copy of certain moves. And this fight against Bertha is where that starts to pay dividends, because I can now teach Ralts my one copy of Grass Knot. And this makes a big difference here. To start the fight, we lead with Feebas and use Toxic on Whiscash. Then, with the help of Magikarp, we're gradually able to stall out the poison. While Gliscor comes in and quickly gets the revenge kill, we can then send in Kricketot and use Bide. Thanks to Kricketot holding an Ockerberry, we're actually able to survive 2 Fire Fangs, meaning that Bide can then finish off Gliscor. From here, the fight is relatively simple. With Charm, Azurill can nerf Golem to -6 attack. As a result, Ralts can tank hits relatively well, allowing us to raise our special attack twice with Calm Mind. After then using Trick Room, this is all we need to secure the win, because with boosted Grass Knots, Ralts can wipe out Golem, as well as the very heavy Hippo that comes in after that. Bertha's Ace Rhyperior is heavy and 4 times weak to Grass, meaning that Grass Knot secures our final KO, giving us a decisive win over Bertha. Honestly, after how torturous that Aaron fight was, it felt so good to get a straightforward win. And that wasn't going to be our only quick win of the Elite Four either, because, believe it or not, I have a deadly strategy in mind to help make both of the next 2 fights completely free. And it all revolves around one TM, Captivate. With this move, if the opponent is the opposite gender, their special attack will be lowered by 2 stages. This TM can be learned by our Azurill, which is female. And in the case of Flint and Lucian, they both lead with special attackers that also happen to be male, making this one move on Azurill incredibly valuable. Against Flint, I expect Houndoom to first use Sunny Day. So on turn 1, I use Encore, an egg move of Azurill's that I've been carrying around since Canalave City. This forces Houndoom to continue using Sunny Day, buying us enough turns to use Captivate 3 times, nerfing Houndoom to -6 special attack. After that, I then switch into Feebas and begin spamming Double Team. Once our evasion is maxed out, Feebas is now a stalling nightmare. Since Flint has no Pokemon that are immune to poison, we can focus entirely on stalling. By combining our max evasion with Protect and Rest, Feebas becomes so hard to kill. So hard in fact, that thanks to a little luck, Feebas is able to poison stall literally all of Flint's Pokemon. This is absolutely absurd, but we were somehow able to pull this off, as the final Flareon eventually falls to poison, yielding us one of the funniest victories of this entire challenge. Watching Flint get bullied by a fish was not something I expected, but I'll take any win that I can get. Having been 6-0'd by the worst team in the game, Flint is understandably speechless. And to be honest, the final member of the Elite Four, Lucian, doesn't fare much better. Mr. Mime is another great candidate for Encore, locking it into either Reflect or Light Screen. Then, Azurill is free to keep using Captivate, nerfing Mr. Mime's special attack, just like we did against Houndoom. This clears the way for Ralts to come in and begin boosting up its stats, gradually raising our evasion, special attack, and special defense. Now, I have to be careful here, making sure to set up Trick Room just as Light Screen is about to fade. But with the right timing, Ralts is now ready to sweep. With the help of another TM I'd been saving, Shadow Ball is able to wipe out Mr. Mime in one shot, after which Espeon also quickly goes down. Then, against Bronzong, I have to risk resetting Trick Room, as we won't have enough turns to get through all of Lucian's Pokemon. Thankfully, this works out, as we only get hit once while re-establishing Trick Room. From there, Shadow Ball clears through Bronzong, as well as the Alakazam that comes in after that. And once Ralts also takes down its own ancestor, Lucian had ultimately been defeated. This is a huge accomplishment. While we struggled so hard against Aaron and suffered a few losses across the other fights, the worst team in the game had now actually conquered all of the Elite Four. However, there's still one more hurdle to try and overcome. The hardest fight in all of Pokemon Platinum, the champion, Cynthia. Her iconic team is obviously strong, but even more than that, it takes everything that we've struggled against during this challenge and packs it into one deadly fight. Ghost types and Dark types have always been a struggle for our two main damage dealers. On top of that, Cynthia carries two Pokemon that are completely immune to Toxic, shutting down our Feebas. Several Pokemon have moves that can't miss, making our double team strategies unreliable, and having a powerful priority move like Extreme Speed also hurts the viability of Trick Room. Putting all of that aside, these are just 6 incredibly strong, diverse Pokemon. There are no obvious weak points here that we can exploit, and yet our team is so severely outmatched. To put this into numbers, the combined stat total on our team is about 1,200. On the other hand, Cynthia's team weighs in with a whopping combined stat total of 3,200. Overall, this team is so much stronger than ours, combined with incredibly deadly moves and coverage to shut down all of our existing strategies. And it's this team that the worst 6 Pokemon would somehow have to try and overcome. So, determined to keep our momentum rolling, we then charged into the next room where Cynthia is waiting, as our final fight then gets underway, and this is a bloodbath. I'm able to hit the lead Spiritomb with Toxic, but Cynthia only needs 2 Shadow Balls to wipe out Feebas. I then tried stalling out the poison, but Spiritomb hits so hard. After Cynthia heals up with a full restore, Kricketot is also finished off. None of our Pokemon can even tank 2 hits. And in the case of Ralts, we instantly die to a single Dark Pulse. Our final Magikarp has nothing that can hit Spiritomb, and we quickly lose our final Pokemon. We had just been annihilated. Spiritomb hits so hard, making it near impossible to set up on. On top of that, since it's female, I can't use Captivate to nerf its special attack. As a result, my only real plan was to rely on Feebas and pray that I get lucky. And on the second attempt, this does somewhat happen. With Double Team, Rest, and Protect, this time I was actually able to stall out Spiritomb thanks to getting some lucky misses. Although, once Spiritomb faints, Cynthia follows up by sending in Roserade, making our evasive Feebas mostly useless since we can't use Toxic on Roserade. I then try sending in our Bug types, but even these can't survive long in the face of Roserade, with Energy Ball and Sludge Bomb doing massive damage onto our Pokemon. While Azurill is able to take down Roserade with Return, we've now taken way too much damage. From here, Lucario can easily clean up all of our remaining Pokemon, handing us another brutal defeat against Cynthia. Even after getting so lucky against Spiritomb, our team still can't make it through half of Cynthia's Pokemon. We've overcome a lot of tough fights during this challenge, and our team has already gone much further than I expected. Although this fight against Cynthia just felt completely hopeless. Against Aaron, I knew that with enough luck, the fight would eventually go our way. But this fight against Cynthia is different. Her team is so consistent, and there are no weak points for us to exploit. Obviously, I wasn't just going to admit defeat already. As skeptical as I was, I continued fighting Cynthia, trying a bunch of different strategies, desperate to try and find some kind of opening. This resulted in me losing a lot. However, after 40 straight hopeless losses against Cynthia, attempt 41 was about to be different. Because, now armed with a brand new strategy, I was about to have my closest attempt yet. Leading with Wurmple is a vital part of my plan. After being hit by Dark Pulse, our Citrus Berry brings Wurmple back above half health, after which we then hit Spiritomb with String Shot, lowering its speed. With Wurmple at this health range, Spiritomb is guaranteed to go for either Dark Pulse or Shadow Ball. Now, for my plan to work, I need Spiritomb to use Shadow Ball, because I switch into Azurill. Our normal type isn't affected by Shadow Ball, and thanks to that String Shot, Azurill can now outspeed Spiritomb, hitting it with Encore, effectively locking Cynthia into Shadow Ball, which is completely useless against Azurill. This gives us the freedom to keep using Waterfall, cleanly taking down Spiritomb. So now we had a way of dealing with Cynthia's lead Pokemon, who previously 6-0'd our whole roster. Since our normal type is on the field, Cynthia then sends in her Lucario. I want to keep Azurill healthy, so basically sacrifice our Magikarp, who falls in 2 turns. Thanks to that sacrifice, this gives us a safe switch into Feebas. And this is where our plan gets crazy, because Feebas is now packing a new move, Secret Power. This move changes its effect based on where the battle is taking place, and for an indoor battle like this, the move has a 30% chance to paralyze, which is exactly what happens on this attempt. Having now done its job, Feebas soon falls to an Aura Sphere and Extreme Speed, but with Lucario now paralyzed, its speed is dropped by 75%. This is significant. Now, Kricketot is able to outspeed and begin hitting Lucario with Growl. Thanks to our Charty Berry, we're able to survive the first Stone Edge. Ultimately, we're able to hit Lucario with Growl 3 times, significantly nerfing its attack. After Kricketot falls to Extreme Speed, Wurmple then comes back in, mostly to continue burning PP. It's not able to last long, but this clears the way for Azurill to hit the field once again. Now we're back to where we started, with Azurill squaring up against Lucario. Except now, Lucario is much slower, and since Lucario is a male, Azurill can use Captivate, sharply lowering its special attack. Also, since we're holding a Chople Berry, Azurill can comfortably tank an Aura Sphere, buying us enough time to land one more Captivate onto Lucario before Azurill ultimately falls. This brings us down to only our final Pokemon, Ralts. With Lucario significantly nerfed, I begin using Double Team and Calm Mind to gradually boost our stats. However, Lucario still manages to land its attacks even through paralysis. As a result, Ralts is brought into the red, and we're only one Shadow Ball away from another loss. So while my evasion still isn't completely maxed out, I decide that I have to go for this now. I have Ralts set up Trick Room, and thankfully, Lucario misses its next Shadow Ball, meaning that Ralts is able to finally take it down with Psychic. And thanks to Azurill already handling Spiritomb, our Ralts can get by only using Psychic. With Ralts at +6 special attack and under Trick Room, we wipe out Cynthia's Garchomp in one hit. The bulky Milotic that follows still isn't a guaranteed one-shot, but we're thankfully lucky enough to hit the damage range that we need. But while this was now our best attempt yet, as Roserade hits the field, we have a problem. Our Trick Room is about to expire, and I'm worried about Cynthia's Togekiss in the back, since it knows Shockwave, which never misses. So to avoid that, I take a chance, hoping that we can dodge Roserade's next attack to re-establish Trick Room, and Ralts dodges. This lets us reset Trick Room for another 5 turns. Now that we move first, with another Psychic, Roserade is mind crushed into oblivion. This leaves Cynthia down to only her Togekiss, a Pokemon with a lot of special defense. Regardless, our only chance is to fire off a boosted Psychic, hoping that it's enough to finish the fight, and it is! Psychic just takes down Togekiss, meaning we had actually beaten Cynthia. Against all odds, the worst 6 Pokemon in the game had somehow conquered the champion. This challenge has been insane. We've had to make use of so many different strategies and moves just to make it through to this point. But now, after taking 215 total losses, we had achieved what I thought was impossible, entering the weakest Pokemon team ever into the Sinnoh Hall of Fame. Jump into this video next for more Pokemon content. This challenge was so hard, but it was a labor of love, and I hope that you enjoyed watching. As always, thank you to our channel members for continuing to support and help make these videos possible. It means a lot. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.